Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, and today I have with me Roy Mill, co-founder and CEO at Joshu. Roy, how's it going today?
It's great. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure. I have so much fun doing the podcast and everything insurance nurse related. So we are recording on a really weird day. So today is September the 8th. 2022 and 5:11 p.m. Eastern time for me, and I believe 2:11 p.m. for you if you're in California. So for the last couple of days, I've been recording podcasts talking about how like breaking the ice, talking about how I've had a really weird week. I was out at InsurTech Austin last week, and basically I landed on Friday back home and with a runny nose, and which I quickly found out was COVID, which I had not had before. I am vaccinated, so I was very lucky, and I've been mostly asymptomatic. Only got tested because my girlfriend is super careful. And then I had my brother, who I had never met, visiting Friday through Tuesday. Ended up being through Wednesday. So it was a big weekend for me.
Wow.
Yeah, it
A
was
brother you never met?
so basically, I knew he existed for the last 18 years, and my dad and his mom were not on good terms. So he had not seen my dad since he was 3. And we had connected on LinkedIn when my grandpa died 5 years ago. Oh, excuse me, not on LinkedIn. I'm so used to saying LinkedIn. On Facebook, he had added me, but neither of us sent the first message. And I was waiting because he was still underage, and our dad and his mom were still fighting. And basically, I had a reminder on my calendar for July 3rd, 2020, once he was 18, to reach out. And then 2020 was a really crazy year, right, with COVID and everything else. So I never did. And finally, a few weeks ago, like I want to say like 7 weeks ago, his mom reached out to me, and we started the conversation. And then later that day, I chatted with him, both of those via Zoom, and we planned. We got him reconnected with my dad. They met a few weeks ago, and they got along really well. And then he came this Labor Day weekend. So yeah, it was an incredible week for me. And then today, Queen Elizabeth II passed away just a few hours ago.
Another family member? No, I'm just kidding.
So I'm definitely not British in any stretch of it, but I am a history nerd, and it is a momentous occasionally. So there goes my productivity today. Like this morning when so I was still working on catching up on emails because I basically ignored emails from like last Thursday to today. So there I was working on catching up on emails, and then the news that she was sick enough that the family had been called in.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
nice.
ooh, this smells like a historic moment. They're not the kind to announce that she's sick.
Right.
And then they announce that she passes, and of course, like there goes my productivity for the day because I'm a history nerd, right? And I feel like dedicating the weekend to rewatch The Crown, kind of thing. So anyway, a really weird day we are recording on, but thank you for and
Thank
then
you for making the time,
no
and
problem.
you're being productive here.
And then for the listeners, somehow Roy waited for me for like 10 minutes at the Zoom call, and I was waiting for him also. Don't really know what happens. Finally, he emailed me, and I logged out and back in, and finally we connected. So anyway, so Roy, it looks like you're in California. By the way, did you know that you are exactly 1 follower away from 2,000 followers on LinkedIn?
Wow. Whoever is the 2000th follower gets a T-shirt for me.
So it'll definitely happen before this podcast goes live. But make sure you follow up on that, because otherwise
Yeah.
So
I
anyway,
wake up every day and check my follower count on every social media.
perfect. So um, we always give the guest the chance to give the elevator pitch. So what is Joshu?
Awesome. So Joshu is a platform for insurance product development and distribution. It's a mouthful, I know. But basically, what we do is we allow insurance product owners at MGAs or carriers to build, deploy, and update their products for digital distribution on the platform. That's kind of a very short way, really elevator pitch
Okay.
on what we do,
So,
and happy to kind of elaborate more.
yeah. So let's kind of unpack that. So a a platform to develop product. There's a few of those.
Mhm.
A platform to distribute. There's a few of those. I had not seen any others that claim to do both the build a product and distribute it. So that seems like a very big bite, right? It seems like a very big thing. I've never worked in product. I grew up as an underwriter, claims first and underwriting.
Mhm.
So am I wrong that that's kind of like a big piece of what MGAs do?
It definitely is. It definitely is. I think, and it's a big part. You really hit the nail on the head because as our background, my co-founder and I, we worked for AdBay before, the cyber insurance fund. So specialty, non-admitted, wholesale broker distribution, and we kind of felt firsthand how complex insurance products are and how complex and slow sometimes is the process of getting them to market, right? You design a product. The way it's usually done is it's kind of three floors to this building. The first floor is the insurance product, right? You say, this is my application, the questions I need to ask, and the other data points. Then my rating model, then all the forms that I need to create. Now I have a spec for an insurance product. When you file with the state for admitted products, that's basically what you file, right? You say, that's my insurance product. So that's floor number one. What do you do next? You say, okay, let's build it on a policy admin system. Or as you mentioned, kind of the product development part of things, right? From an IT perspective. Usually you hand it over to someone else, technical, in-house, or third party to build it for you. Then the third floor, after you've built it in a policy admin system, is let's think about portals, APIs, and how do you then distribute it. That process is a really long one and a really broken one. The ownership is being broken before digital age, right? As an insurance product owner, you control everything, right? This is how my product looks like. Here's the PDF. I'm going to send it to all my brokers and expect them to send it over to my team in a over email. Now that everyone's moved to portals and web applications, you have to bring it over, bring in the IT people, and then you kind of lose that ownership there and have to work with someone else. And that takes time. And by the time it goes to the third floor of the portal, a lot of time has passed, and you may have not hit the right your product has too many questions in the application, or the distribution channel wasn't right, and you built everything for a portal for direct portal, and now you actually say no, agents are better. It takes a long time to close these loops to find this product market fit for your insurance product. And what we're trying to do is really shrink that process to a place where you can do everything from the convenience of your laptop, at least for experimentation. So you have an idea for an insurance product, set it up on the platform, invite a few agents to try to fill it up and see how hard it is to ask them for the revenue of a certain department 5 years ago. Maybe there's a simpler way to ask that question or collect the data, right? Get that feedback, see if it works. If it doesn't, try to improve it. Add questions, remove questions, change the rating, add the endorsements, whatever you need to do there, you can do it all from one place and really shorten those cycles, those feedback loops until you get to the point you want to get to. Sorry, that was a little bit long-winded.
No, that's fine. I have zero experience in the product side, so that was super helpful. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If if we are able to, right, it's the whole MVP thing applied to insurance products, right?
Exactly.
Not for anybody new to the insurtech side, or for any listeners who come from traditional insurance or who are new to insurance in general, MVP doesn't mean most valuable player. It means minimum. What does it mean?
Minimally viable product.
Minimally viable product. So what's the smallest thing we can test that is actually representative of the product we're trying to develop, so that if we're going the wrong way, we don't waste any time going the wrong way.
Exactly. Because we see a lot of folks investing, and it depends on how much runway you have. If you're doing a project for a large carrier, if you're a small MGA that's starting out and wants to, how many iterations can you make with the resources that you have? And we're trying to make that really minimal, so that you can really make a lot of iterations, a lot of fixes, change courses. That's all the products we know. The first iPhone did not have copy and paste, right? Today if they waited to get what we have today with iPhone 13, they would maybe never even gotten to market.
14 as of yesterday.
14. Oh, really? I was more concentrated on focus on the Queen.
It appears that the new killer feature this year is that if you are outside of cell phone signal, but you have a clear sky and you have an emergency, it can send an SOS via satellite, which I guess, like, for my mother-in-law who loves going hiking and getting lost without signal, this might be a good thing. But somehow I didn't jump immediately in. Like, I didn't put something on my calendar about the upcoming pre-order date. So maybe they're running out of ideas.
Maybe, I don't know.
But yes, we get what you're saying.
But yeah, I think the MVP concept, lean startup, all that stuff is definitely something that sounds like an oxymoron for oxymoron. Sorry, English is a second language for me. For insurance companies, like, you don't think about MVPs, you don't think about lean startup, you think about very long processes. Definitely, when it's an admitted product, obviously you have to do it with the states and it's long. But that for non-admitted specialty products, you're as fast as you want. Decide how complex you want the product to be. You probably want to start small and kind of expand. And the thing is, when you lose that ownership and you have to then hand it over to someone to build an IT, it makes people way more careful and say, okay, I have to make sure I cross all the T's and dot all the I's, because if I make changes after I handed over those specs, they're going to be mad at me for changing things midway. So again, that's another, independence brings agility, and agility brings speed to market, because you're doing those changes much faster.
Okay. Looking at the website, I really like how in the product tab, you've got explanations for different areas that it affects, right? So you've got an explanation for product, but you've also got an explanation for distribution, for how it makes it easier for both brokers and the final client. And then you've got a tab for underwriters, how the whole thing makes the job easier for underwriters, for IT when it comes to integration. I have looked at hundreds of insurtech websites, and I can't remember any that explained it so clearly what the effect would be of your product to each of the different areas affected by it. So for the listeners, definitely check out Joshu. That's JOSHUINS.com, because it really like lays that very, very well.
Thank you. That's great work by our product and marketing teams. I appreciate that.
Awesome. So is it only for MGAs, or is it also for carriers?
It's both. We do see two segments that we're talking to, and the difference, I would say, is not necessarily MGAs versus carriers. It's new players versus established players. because you do have MGAs who are, MGAs, but they already have a full tech stack and a full way of doing things, and they've been doing it for dozens, if not hundreds of years. And those are different than a new player that comes in and has nothing and needs to decide, okay, what platform am I using to operationalize this new product, new business that I'm building. So definitely for the new folks, it's very easy to get going to, if you're looking for capacity as a new MGA, with Joshu, you can get a full end-to-end kind of process very quickly. And so it's a very lean way to get it, where obviously there's kind of the insured techs that usually want to build things themselves, and that's fine and that's great, and sometimes that's better. Definitely there's a lot of MGAs that are coming from insurance. They know distribution, they know risk, they know they have this book of business. All they need is a tech stack, and that's exactly where we fit in really beautifully.
I'm definitely seeing a lot more of that. You're absolutely right. So the early insurtechs were tech people, what I like to call a tech hammer looking for an insurance nail,
Right.
and sometimes they figured it out, sometimes they didn't.
Right.
Nowadays, I see a lot more insurtechs who are insurance people,
Mhm.
and they're utilizing the tech stack, whether that's Socotra, whether that's right, whatever combination of tech stack. And I even had on the podcast Michelle at, I can remember, Fincher,
Mhm. Mhm.
who's a consulting company that helps insurtechs figure out the right tech stack. So
Right.
clearly, it's becoming much more common to grab an off the shelf tech stack, or off the shelf components, and the beauty of it is if since the components are all modern and API, they're so much easier to plug into each other than it used to be when trying to integrate with a carrier. Um,
For sure. And I
so
think, and it's kind of like people ask about positioning and differences, and sometimes there's some overlap. And I think just like in marketing tech, if you're thinking, HubSpot does some of the things that MailChimp does, and X does some of what that. But the thing is, they still have integrations between them, even though they have some overlap in
mhm.
the stacks. And then every client decides, how do I build this puzzle of all the tools to get what I'm trying to get? So I encourage people, and a lot of their prospects, they are looking at all those possible tools and vendors that are out there. And I think, different use cases have different, sets of tools that is probably best suited for them. And Michelle's doing great work with Fincher and kind of advising those. We also work with Parent Night, and they do a lot of that stuff. I know a lot of other kind of consulting companies are helping on that front. And just to kind of finish that thought before, so these are the kind of the new players, and we love working with them. Usually they also have a sense of urgency because they want to get to market, and they want to get to market as fast as possible. So for us, it's great. There is the second established players kind of aspect, and then the sense of urgency might not be as, because they already have, right, a cash cow, they're already making money. Now the question is, how quickly do they want to innovate? Some of them do see the main core products being commoditized, and they're thinking about, okay, maybe pet insurance, maybe cyber insurance, maybe EPL. A lot of ideas for product. Great. Joshu can be a great experimentation platform for you. And that's how we're not trying to replace any Guidewire, Duck Creek, or whatever policy admin system we have. Again, we're talking, there's some overlap in the feature, but we're trying to address a different need. It's more around new product development, experimenting with the distribution, seeing what works. And then when you see that it works, we can talk about maybe you move the product over to the policy admin system after you prove it works, and then it's worth investing that. Or we build an integration so that it stays on Joshu, but everything is kind of transferred automatically in a kind of fully automated and integrated way. Or you leave it on Joshu. It really depends on how you, again, it goes back to that puzzle, and that's the main, I think, task for IT people, is how do you build this short term, and how do you build it in a way that will scale and be able to maintain it long term. So we work with both MGAs or new players and established players versus MGAs or carriers.
Okay. Okay. Um, Any great customer success stories? And
Yes,
you-
we
and
have. We just
and
sorry.
and and feel free, if you are able to share the name of the customer, fantastic. If you're not, then don't. But from the insurance nurse perspective, you can share the name of the customer.
Awesome. We cannot share names of customers
Okay.
before I did not coordinate it with anyone else. And I will say, in terms of our journey, we started actually funded in 2021, very early on. We were kind of bootstrapped with a proof of concept throughout the tough times of COVID. And we kind of fundraised for 2 years. The first year for taking the proof of concept to a fully kind of baked product that we have today, and then the second year, which we are in today, for selling it. So we've been pretty recent with our clients. We already have 2 clients that are out, and they're both actually in kind of the E&O space. We have 2 that are finalizing the reinsurance. So we've implemented them, final testing, final approvals, and are going to launch this month. Some of the properties, some of them
Exciting.
some multiple kind of a package of multiple products between general liability and product liability and property. And one more thing that I forget right now. And a couple more that we're kind of working on in the meantime. So yes, it's faster than you've seen other places. Yes, there are some difficulties that sometimes are outside of the tech stack. It's the reinsurance falls through and you need to work on a different capacity provider, or something else is going on. I apologize for the noise.
No
Just shut off
worries.
notifications. But yeah, it's been great, and we've been using kind of early customers as referrals when new customers are coming on and want to talk to people who are working with us. It's really exciting.
Okay. So I'm really curious. Number one, how did you end up coming into insurance? So looking at your LinkedIn, you've got a degree in politics, philosophy, and economics, then a PhD in economics
Mhm.
from Stanford. So often like a top PhD in economics, uh, and then you worked at Ancestry. So how do you go from there to insurance?
Man, I don't know. It's like everyone has their story of how they got into insurance, right? There are the people who were born to 5 generations of insurance. And that wasn't me. Yeah, so I came to the US. I'm from Israel originally, came to the US in 2008 for a degree. The plan was be a professor of economics. I can go and talk, I'll try to make it brief, but basically, I got an offer back from Israel. My wife wasn't ready to go back, and we started looking for alternatives. And academia and I kind of decided to part ways. I went to work for Ancestry. Actually, you said you're a history buff. I used to my specialization was in labor economics and historical labor markets as well. So it lent itself. We were borrowing data from Ancestry until their Ancestry legal called us and said, stop, you have too many grandmothers. It can't be the case that you're researching your own family. And that's true, because we were researching a cross section of Americans in the century. But that was a good icebreaker, and went to work there as a product manager on the family history side and on the DNA side. Wanted to continue on the kind of digital health genomics side, but some friends back from Israel called and asked, hey, do you want to join our startup and lead product management for it? And I asked, what is the startup about? And they said cyber insurance, and I told them it sounds like the most boring thing I could think about. Insurance has this bad
And that
rap
was
of being
cyber.
boring.
Like cyber is considered much sexier than the rest of
It
insurance.
is. It is.
So the fact that even cyber, you were like, that's the most boring thing I could think about. We really need to work on our branding. Anyway, continue.
No, I don't remember what movie it was, but there was a movie about this insurance agent, and it was a very, one of those slow movies, and somehow it stuck to me that insurance is kind of for
Every time insurance is mentioned in a movie, it's a negative mention.
right.
Some of the most famous ones are the insurance agent in Groundhog Day, who's the most annoying character in the history of humanity, and Mr. Incredible in The Incredibles is a claims adjuster, and he hates his job. So like very, according to Paulie, is the only one where Ben Stiller's character is an actuary. Now, what he actually does in the movie, like when they show him as an actuary, has nothing to do with the reality of being an actuary. But at least actuarial is not mentioned in a negative light. But every other movie, we're always mentioned in a negative light. So yeah, not uncommon.
Exactly. So I was, popular culture perception of insurance, but I said, hey, I know you guys, let's talk. And just from talking to the people and saying, hey, these are a great group of people. And actually, the problem is really interesting, as you mentioned. So I did realize it's an interesting problem. The cyber part kind of connected to some stuff I did in my past, and the insurance is it's not, I didn't do any financial stuff for the econ degree, but it was more around labor economics and kind of discrimination of employees and screening for risks and screening for employees has some interesting kind of, theoretically speaking, interesting kind of commonalities. So I was excited about how do we price risk, how do we think about this, how do we build a technology to empower this, and that's what brought me to At Bay. Met my current co-founder. He led the engineering team and was employee number one. And then I joined the product team, the tech product management. That's another thing I learned when I joined an insurtech. There's product management, but there's insurance, and that's what we are selling, and that's the kind of the crown jewel, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And we're there to kind of service them and make sure that it works on a tech stack. So that's how I got into insurance. 2.5, 3 years later, I'm like, okay, I know insurance now. Let's build a platform that can do it for any type of insurance. And you need to have a grain of ignorance to go into this thing, because otherwise you won't have the courage. So I'm glad I didn't know everything I know today, but it's been an amazing ride, and kind of so far I'm really excited about this.
Fantastic. So they pull you into insurance. At Base doing cyber really well. And you're like, why is the rest of insurance not done in a similar way?
In a sense, you're like, hey, it was hard even for us. The early days, we had to launch twice. The first time it wasn't as great as, people don't think about the first time people, because you never hear about the failures, so-called. But that was something we learned from and kind of change course, and suddenly you find that success. And that's, again, going back to how important it is to make those iterations faster, because if you don't have enough runway, you won't have time for the second or the third iteration. So if you can do 5 iterations until you hit the goal, that's much better. But yeah, it took time, a few months, and you're like, it's probably even a bigger problem for larger organizations, or for folks that don't have all the engineers that we had. And insurance, we need more products. We need more innovation on those insurance products. And it's a really fascinating, just working with prospects, and we're doing customized demos. And after signing an NDA, they sent us a rater, and some of those raters are really crazy. Like, every aspect of the economy has risk associated with it, and there's some actuary who worked on a table to price those risks. So from zoo animals to employment practices, all the terrible stuff that you can do there, you're just learning about the risks, you're learning about them, and you're kind of powering some way to transfer the risk and kind of make people more successful, which is, again, great.
You touched on two of the things that I always say about insurance. This is an endlessly fascinating industry because absolutely everything needs insurance, especially in a highly litigious society like the US. Absolutely everything needs insurance, and that makes it super interesting. Number two, you touched on what I like to call the aviation underwriter paradox, which I'll summarize very quickly. To imagine a kid that grows up playing flight simulator, and when being a giant nerd about aviation, and whenever their family travels for holiday or vacation, they're at the airport, sticking their face to the window, identifying airplanes, right? And they've always known that they want to be a pilot. And then for whatever reason, bad eyesight or whatever, they can't, actually, they're colorblind or something, and they can't become a commercial pilot or a military pilot. That kid is a perfect aviation underwriter or aviation broker or
For
aviation
sure.
actuary, right? Why? Because you can't pay for passion, right? Uh, uh,
Mm.
I I can't pay you enough to become a giant nerd about aviation, right? So by nature, he or she is going to be on top of everything that's going on in the space and what's coming in the future because it's their passion, right? The problem is that because a lot of what I think about, like you guys have to execute. You guys have to think about insurance product and how to execute. The beauty of my role is that I don't have to execute on anything. I think about talent within the insurance space. And I do have to recruit within the insurance space and find companies to recruit for. But I spend a lot of time just thinking about talent issues in the insurance space and writing and making videos about them. And basically, so this kid is a perfect aviation underwriter. The problem is aviation underwriter. Number one, the kid doesn't know that this is a thing, right? We have to identify him or her. Number two, even after we identify you would be a perfect aviation underwriter and convince him that that would be a great job, a great career, it's not an entry level job. So we have to help them get into insurance in general, then
Mhm.
into underwriting, and then into aviation, which is a really specialty area, right? So it's tricky. Uh, but yes, this industry is just fascinating,
It's
absolutely
spot
fascinating.
on. Spot on. I
Um,
think what you said about passion is true for anything that you do in any career building and hiring. Finding people that passion is amazing. And yes, it's kind of when you love what you do, you know what your work, you don't work a single day, right? It's basically
exactly.
that's I'm looking for it in every place. And I like what you said. I didn't think about the kind of turning your hobby always there's kind of an insurance mirror of what you think you wanted to do, entertainment, sports, all these things. There's an insurance kind of counterpart that you can go into, and people are not. I even realized it, and
Mhm.
having
Yeah.
your
No,
insurance.
I run as part of Insurance Nerds. I run chatwithtony.com, and it's free career advice for any insurance professional or aspiring insurance professional. Very often, I'm chatting with somebody who's like stuck in claims in like at like State Farm or like some other like entry level uh, 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 auto claims role in a call center, and they're like, is there a future here? I don't know what I want to do, right? And it becomes clear during the conversation that they have a passion for sports or they have a passion for video games or they have a passion for whatever. So I go out of my way to I guarantee somebody specializes in underwriting that. It's not an entry level job. How can we help you find your way there, right? Um, since you are a labor economist, basically a PhD in, so I did not prepare you for the question. So
Okay.
we can
let me
cut it
let
out.
me pull my books one
Yeah.
second.
So we can cut it out. But I am just curious, just on your thoughts. So currently, here in the U.S., we are sitting in a mild recession, right? Right. As of July 1st, we have had 2 quarters of very slight GDP decline, but at the same time, unemployment keeps going down, and then we have inflation. But how does it make sense that unemployment keeps
Oh,
going down while we're supposedly in a mild recession? And I'm guessing that once Q3 numbers come out, we will no longer be in a recession. I'm guessing that it will have been a very short, very small recession for Q1 and Q2, basically.
wow.
And then
That's
I know that you
curveball.
have not had
No,
time
it's
to
it's great.
research it, right?
It's borderline labor and macro, and my lecturer or professor in macro in the first year, who was also Israeli, so he was very direct with me, and he's like, "The way you passed the test was like this, just barely. We should let you pass." So, macro and me are not great friends. I was more in the microeconomics part of labor. Um, I will, yes. I'm trying to think if I do have an intelligence response to what you
and
said.
if you don't, that's
Intelligent.
fine. I do understand that from my perspective, where my highest level of economics understanding is from a general MBA at a state school, at Iowa State, right? I understand that that's a long ways away from a PhD, much less from Stanford. So I totally get that if it's not your specialty, it's not your specialty.
Yeah, I'll do the responsible thing and say I'm not an expert.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Especially since we're recording. Without that pressure, maybe I would come up with some random explanation and say,
I respect that. Okay, my theory, and again, with no research to it, like this is just like
mine.
My theory is that without having dug into any numbers or having the skill set to dig into any numbers, my theory is that the recession did cause some layoffs and stuff, and we've seen them in the insurtech space, and especially in the tech space, right? But in the new remote first world, which is where I live in insurtech and insurance, the downsides people very quickly are finding other jobs because they don't even have to move, right? So if you're white collar and you have some experience, the friction to finding your next job is a lot smaller than it used to be. Now, that's not the case in blue collar. So I'm guessing that the slight recession is having an effect on some blue collar jobs, and that if we could find numbers broken out between white collar and blue collar employment, I'm guessing that blue collar employment is seeing an increase in unemployment, but white collar employment is not, because of the ease of finding a remote job. That's my guess. Which
I haven't looked at the numbers. I can say on the, we have two offices. We have an office in Tel Aviv for R&D engineering. That's where my co-founder lives, and that's an office. It's like in person. Everyone needs to go there. 5 minutes from the beach. Very nice. Here in the US, we had, we started in COVID time. I'm hiring remotely. Not, I would have rather been in an in-office setting, especially as a startup, as you want to get that everyone kind of drinking the Kool-Aid and really excited about every win and kind of high-fiving each other. It's not as fun to high-five over Slack than to high-five in person. But hiring remotely gave us a way to cast a really wide net and tap into talent everywhere, especially in insurance. If you're just looking in the Bay Area, not as great as doing a national search.
Yeah, tech talent, Bay Area, fantastic. Expensive, but the best in the world. Or you're from Tel Aviv, so some of the best in the world, because Tel Aviv has amazing engineers, right? But insurance talent in California is very, very hard to find because it's just not an insurance area. If you look at the map of carriers, most of them are Midwest and East. There's more carriers in Columbus, Ohio, than there are in all of California when it comes to major offices. It's ridiculous.
Des Moines,
Des Moines, Iowa, like probably has more carriers than like the entire West Coast. So yeah, it's gonna be hard to find carrier talent in Silicon Valley. It's just not a normal place for carrier talent. Roy, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for being such a good sport on questions that were like way off from what Joshu does.
Yes, especially because I didn't have an answer for it. But I'm going to look, do some homework, talk to my friends, old schoolmates, and say I have this question for you.
I don't expect an answer, but yeah,
if we had an answer, maybe we could have solved it by now.
If you do find something, post it on LinkedIn and tag me on it. But a real pleasure having you on. When it goes live, I will tag you on LinkedIn, and I will tag Joshu on LinkedIn. Awesome. And I did send you a connection request. Accept it when you have a chance. Thank you so much for your time.
I'll see you at ITC.
I will definitely be at ITC. Top hat and red jacket, not blue. Red jacket and top hat. Thank you.